It's time for The Verdict. The Verdict is a lively discussion of current events and legal issues pertinent to Oklahomans. The Verdict is hosted by Kent Myers and Mick Cornett. The Verdict is sponsored in part by the Able Law Firm. It's time for The Verdict.
Thanks for joining us, and welcome once again to The Verdict. I'm Mick Cornett, and I am joined, as always, by one of Oklahoma's top legal experts, Kent Myers. Kent, what's up today?
A fun guest, a fun show today. For his fifth appearance on The Verdict, we're honored to have Senator Cal Hobson, the President Pro Tem of the Oklahoma State Senate. We've had Senator Hobson on from the very beginning of The Verdict, off and on, for 4 other times, but never as President Pro Tem of the Senate. He's got a lot to tell us about what went on in this last very, very difficult session. He's a fine gentleman and a very articulate leader, a consensus builder, and one about whom there's great consensus that he knows what he's doing and he knows how to do it. So it should be a very interesting and good show.
We'll talk about term limits, tort reform, the budget, lots to talk about with the President Pro Tem of the Oklahoma State Senate, Cal Hobson. It's next on The Verdict.
All children deserve a life with hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
The Able Law Firm, based in Oklahoma City and recognized nationally for its superior legal ability and very high ethical standards. If you've been injured or believe someone you love has been a victim and needs to talk to an attorney, call the Able Law Firm. Initial consultations are free. The Able Law Firm. In Oklahoma City, the number is 239-7046.
St. Gregory's University has been changing the lives of people like me for 125 years. Affordable, private Catholic education, balanced with dedication to community and service, makes St. Gregory special. We're extremely proud of our students' outstanding academic achievements and our nationally ranked athletic teams. It's when you help a student build a future of balance, integrity, and service that you change a life forever. St. Gregory's, a community for life.
American Express Tax and Business Services. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. American Express Tax and Business Services. In Oklahoma City, the phone number is 405-843-5311.
Bringing out the best in each student. That is the simple goal and tradition of Heritage Hall. The focus on the individual shapes the educational experience at Heritage Hall. Each student benefits from small classes, able, dedicated teachers, a solid academic curriculum, and exceptional co-curricular programs of athletics, arts, community service, and other activities, parental involvement, personalized counseling, and the development of responsibility, integrity, and love of learning. If you want education taught with pride, then you want Heritage Hall.
Welcome back to The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers is going to introduce our guests.
We are pleased to have back the Honorable Cal Hobson, the President Pro Tempore of the Oklahoma State Senate, for his 5th visit to The Verdict. Cal is a native of Lexington, Oklahoma, graduated from the University of Oklahoma, is a retired colonel in the Oklahoma Air National Guard, was a member of the Oklahoma House of Representatives for 12 years, and has been a member of the Oklahoma State Senate for 13. Cal, thank you so much for joining us again on The Verdict.
It's an honor to be here.
Well, we're pleased to have you. One of the big topics this session was, of course, the budget, if not the biggest topic. Money being tight, not knowing who's going to get cut where or how much or when. The governor announced a zero-based budgeting approach, and I assume to some extent that was followed. And we have a little cartoon I'd like to run through with you to discuss zero-based budgeting.
Okay.
If we could take a look at Dilbert. The question is, what is the priority of your budget request? The answer is highest of the high. Then the surveyor asks, everyone rated their own budget needs highest priority. It is a mockery of the priority system. And then finally he goes back and says, well, name one thing that everyone would agree is a low priority, and she answers, whatever you're doing. It sounds like that's a little bit of the approach that some of the agencies and boards took to the zero-based budgeting, but nevertheless you got a budget passed.
We did, and when you said you were going to show cartoons about the budget in the legislature, it could have been far worse.
Well, this is a family show. What's your sense of, in the recent months, how things have, how are things going with revenue?
Well, you know, I'm a partisan guy, and people get that way as they're Democrats or Republicans, or in California, a whole bunch of different kind of animals out there running for office. But this new governor, Governor Brad Henry, came into office, a surprise to many people, and said, I'm going to govern from the middle and in a bipartisan way. And I think lots of people didn't believe him because we're kind of used to combat politically out there pretty intensely, at least over the last 8 years. And that's not a mean thing about Frank Keating. It's just he was a very partisan kind of guy. And so when Governor Henry came and said what he said and met physically with all four caucuses, the Democrats and the Republicans in the House and the Senate, time after time after time, I think he developed a trust and a rapport. I mean, the Republicans are not happy that he won, but it at least allowed for conversations and a trust level being built at a time when over $700 million of a budget shortfall had to be faced. And so I give him the lion's share of the credit, and also members of both parties that worked from the middle, not the flamethrowers on the right or the bomb throwers on the left. They never get anything done. It's that middle area where you must govern, and he was a good leader at a most difficult time.
As far as our state's budget problems go, do you feel like the worst is over?
Recent articles, as you know, pointed out collections in June and July indeed were slightly above the estimate. But if you look deeply into those numbers, you'll see that the income tax collections and the sales tax collections are still very flat. It was good old natural gas, the price of natural gas, that drove those budget numbers to improved levels. Now, every time the experts tell me what the energy prices are going to do, I really ought to go bet the opposite, because invariably they have been wrong. But right now, natural gas is trending above $5 a 1,000 cubic feet. That's historically high. If that holds and then we go into winter, we could be, you know, at the bottom coming up. I hope that is the case.
But what you're suggesting then is that one must look beyond natural gas prices and oil prices insofar as revenue source is concerned to see if a recovery is really occurring.
That's absolutely true, and you need to examine the state in several parts. While we here in Oklahoma City are gleeful about various announcements, you all had some new announcement for the Bricktown area yesterday, another $40 million investment. We also, on the other hand, have this looming fear in Tulsa that one of their major corporate entities may be out of there by the end of the year. Hope that is not right. You then have the other mix, if you've been to Seminole lately, with the loss of Wrangler, the largest employer. That's hugely devastating for that community. And so we really have 2 or 3 Oklahomas. We have Tulsa, we have Oklahoma City, and then we have the rural areas.
I read one thing, staying on the budget just for another minute, that we had a one-time revenue influx of several $100,000, maybe more, that we can't count on for next year. Assuming we do not have that, and assuming everything else stays the same, without any significant increase or decrease, are we in worse shape next year from a budget standpoint than we were this year?
Could well be, and it's what you're describing is Oklahoma's share of the $20 billion with a B that the federal Congress put in the most recent President Bush tax package as a sop to a number of members to get them to vote for that. Now that sounds like a lot of money, $20 billion. It is a lot of money, but California's shortfall alone is $38 billion. Every state except 3 or 4 had deficits to deal with. So while I'm thankful for that money to help with Medicaid and then some other general government activities, Homeland Security, etc., your point is exactly on target, that if we build that in a repetitive way and expect more to flow in future years from the feds, I think that would be a terrible mistake.
There was some tort reform in the last session. How did that process work out, and who won?
Well, I'm very happy to tell you that I was not in the middle of the tort reform debate because I am not an attorney and readily admit I don't understand all the nuances. But I do know that Governor Henry understands that topic. For better or worse, he is an attorney, and he convened doctors, lawyers, nursing home representatives, consumers, and others over many, many days and weeks down on the second floor and basically locked them in rooms.
Yeah, we had several of them on this show as that process was going on.
Did they admit that that's kind of...
Well, they were a little
apparently they had been let go for a few hours.
Yeah. They looked a little haggard, I have to tell you.
I know one meeting started at 11 a.m. and ended at 1 a.m. the next morning. Bottom line, is it a perfect bill? Of course not. The only perfect legislation ever passed in the legislature are my bills. That wasn't my bill, but it I think, has taken a number of steps in the right direction on cost containment without forgetting the injured workers, while also trying to get ahead of this doctor loss that we've seen in West Virginia and Nevada and Florida and other states where they simply have walked away from their practices. Progress was made. I suspect it'll be a topic of interest and debate again next year.
We haven't heard the last of it.
No.
Let me jump in here and get us to a break, so we want to ask you about term limits, and we'll do that when we get back. We're talking to State Senator Cal Hobson. You're watching The Verdict.
Sure. I've got my share of problems. Who doesn't?
Stop the world! I want to get off!
The pressures are enormous. Temptation is everywhere.
I have found a retreat.
I find real answers in this. This is a whole lot more than those Sunday school stories about David and a slingshot.
It's a daily dose of God's Word.
Read the Bible.
Read the Bible.
Find the answers for yourself. Read the Bible. This message brought to you by the New King James Version of the Bible and this television station.
I was in the 6th grade on the honor roll and everything, then I got pregnant. School was not important to me, so I dropped out. And now that I'm 15, I have 2 babies. It's important for me to finish school because I don't want my babies to have to go through the things I went through. I don't want to live off other people for the rest of my life. I want to be somebody. I don't want to live like this.
On September 11th, Michael Hinkson's guide dog, Roselle, led him from his office on the 78th floor of the World Trade Center to safety.
In fact, Roselle saves my life every day.
You can make a difference in someone's life. Get involved. Visit Guide Dogs for the Blind on the web at guidedogs.com or call 800-295-4050.
What a good dog. Yeah.
That's a great lag putt by Jennifer. Raymond really got a hold of that one. Looks like a lot of hard work is starting to pay off for Gene.
With programs like the First Tee of Tulsa, the South Central PGA is growing the game and teaching juniors the life lessons learned in golf.
Words can't describe the feeling of winning your first tournament.
Our children want to know everything about the world around them. And yet sometimes what they discover makes them feel vulnerable and insecure. In times like these, they need the comfort of an adult, the honesty of parents, and playtime to help them deal with their feelings and fears. Time that will literally heal their hearts. The gift of imagination allows children to see a better world. Playtime allows them a chance to practice creating it. Don't underestimate the power of play.
Mick Cornett and Kent Myers back on The Verdict. This week's guest is President Pro Temp of the Oklahoma State Senate, Cal Hobson. Kent, where do we go from here?
I wanted to ask Senator Hobson to explain to our viewers just very briefly and generally what term limits is about, and then I'd like to ask some specific questions about how it's affecting the work out there.
Term limits are about getting rid of long-time incumbent politicians. It's very popular. About 70% of the voters approved the vote way back in 1990. And it basically says that no member can serve more than a total of 12 years, and that's 12 years total, whether it be in the House or the Senate. 21 states have term limits, but no state has passed term limits in the last 7 to 8 years. The wind kind of went out of that.
Is the pendulum shifting back the other way in some states?
Actually, at least 2 states have repealed term limits. There's just no need to argue about that in Oklahoma. Term limits are a fact of life, and the first members affected will depart in 2004, and they will take, as you might expect, hundreds of years of legislative experience. And many people say that's part of the problem, and others will say, well, now the people that will run the legislature are not accountable to the people because they will be 2 groups. They will be longtime bureaucrats. I don't mean that in a pejorative sense, it's just the truth. And lobbyists who do not have term limits. And so if Ma and Pa, whoever has a problem, I believe we'll find more and more of the influence will come from the agency heads and lobbyists, not from elected officials that they can toss out.
Well, the 2 operative dates then are 2004 for part of the legislature and 2006 for the remainder?
Correct. That's right.
What impact do you think that will have on how the legislature works as working bodies, the 2 houses?
I've observed it, you know, the early phasing of it here, plus what has happened in other states. And on the upside, you do bring in a lot more new faces. There's more opportunity because incumbents are harder to beat. There's no question about that. They have the ability to raise money, unlike many challengers. So you'll have fresh ideas, new ideas. Some of the downside, you won't have people sitting there with the experience of saying, now wait a minute, we tried that in 1983 or 88 or 92 or whatever, and it blew up in our face. It cost us money. It was stupid. So you won't have the institutional memory, and I fear also somewhat of a lack of love and appreciation for the people's legislature. Because oftentimes it's human nature. People will be terming out. What's their focus? Are they focused on public policy? Or are they thinking about perhaps their own next job? And So it's a mixed bag, but it is here. It's a reality, and we'll deal with it.
We're several months into Brad Henry's first year of tenure as the governor of the state of Oklahoma. How do you think he's done so far?
I have to admit right off, you know, he's a Democrat, I'm a Democrat. I was for him from the very beginning over everybody else. He has governed in a civil, considerate manner, lovely wife, family. I pushed, as you all know, and I readily admit, for some additional forms of revenue for our schools. That's code for a temporary tax increase earmarked for our schools. I could not get him or many others interested in it. Raising taxes is radioactive almost anywhere. But I've not liked some of the consequences in health care and education because of our revenue difficulty. But in other areas, he was determined to have a vote on a lottery. Almost everybody, when he started, said, there's no chance that'll happen. The reality is the voters will decide in November of 2004, and it's because of his work there. Tort reform, I believe he gets the lion's share of the credit. And he and his budget director, a brilliant young man named Scott Meacham.
Who's been a guest on the verdict.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I hope you agree. He's got a lot of gray matter because I really am impressed with him. Cobbled together a budget without tax increases, but there's over $200 million of one-time money in that budget, and that's why I'm fully convinced that 2004 will be every bit as difficult a legislative session as 2003.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. But what do you expand on 2004? What issues do you see going to be in the headlines next year?
If we continue this insatiable desire to lead effectively the world in the rate of incarceration of non-violent offenders, and for 11 straight years leading the nation in locking up females, non-violent females, we will continue to throw millions of dollars into a rat hole that brings us very little return when there are alternatives, sanctions, punishments that are much cheaper if we would simply have the political will in a bipartisan way to address it. I hope that we will step up to the plate on that question finally. The budget, education, the whole Medicaid issue. Oklahoma has over 600,000 uninsured citizens. They get health care, but they get it at the last possible moment in the most expensive way at the emergency rooms. That's not smart public policy, and we need to do a better job in that area, as well as education and criminal justice.
Got about 30 seconds left, Ken.
Real briefly, how does the job as President Pro Tem of the Senate differ from just being a senator that you were for 12 years before you assumed this position?
Someday it really sucks because you've got to decide about parking spots in the west parking lot. I never realized that went with the territory. I thought I was really somebody important. It's very challenging. There are 47 very independent-minded other senators, plus a strong speaker and a governor, and trying to cobble all those ideas together in a civil fashion is very challenging.
Senator Hobson, thanks for coming on The Verdict.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
We're going to wrap it up. We'll be back with a few final thoughts when we return.
It is about balancing our choices between the gray of the concrete jungle and the stunning beauty of the real one, between a stoic facade of granite and the fury of the canyon. It's why there's EarthShare, the simple way to find balance. EarthShare is the workplace giving program bringing the leading environmental groups under one umbrella. Support EarthShare, support them all. EarthShare. Please ask your employer about workplace giving. To learn more, visit our website.
What are your cholesterol numbers? Don't know? If you're over the age of 20, you should. In fact, about 1 in 5 people has high cholesterol. Do you have a family history of high cholesterol? I do, and that's why I learned my cholesterol numbers. Talk to your doctor. Get the lowdown. Call 1-800-AHA-USA1 to join the Cholesterol Lowdown. The Cholesterol Lowdown is a free cholesterol education program provided by the American Heart Association.
This is no simple reform. It really is a revolution, a revolution, a revolution, a revolution.
On my honor, I will do my best.
To do my duty to God and my country.
And to obey the Scout law.
To help other people at all times.
To keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. Morally straight. A Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent.
The Boy Scouts of America, where above all else, character counts.
We're back to wrap up another edition of The Verdict. Kent?
Well, Cal Hobson is a very well-spoken, well-informed public servant. He talked to us today about the budget struggles and how that we do not seem to be out of the woods, although things could be worse. They are looking somewhat better. And I was very interested in his discussion of term limits, but he raised something that I think we ought to seriously think about working to get for our viewers, and that is a show on the rate of incarceration of women in Oklahoma for nonviolent offenses. Cal pointed out for the last 11 years, Oklahoma has been number one in that throughout the United States, and I think we can explore that a little bit and try to find out why. We'll ask Mary Fallon, who is the chairperson of the Special Task Force on that subject, to come join us, along with Rob Wallace, the district attorney, who is the president of the District Attorney's Council, to discuss that next week, and we'll just try to find out what's going on.
All right. Well, we want to invite our viewers to check out our website, theverdict.tv. And when you go there, be sure and send us an email and tell us a story or a program topic that you'd like to see us discuss on a future edition of The Verdict. Again, thanks to our guest, State Senator Cal Hobson. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next time on The Verdict.
You've been watching The Verdict with Kent Myers and Mick Cornett. The Verdict is sponsored in part by the Able Law Firm,